Have you ever felt like you're working harder than everyone around you, yet somehow you're still falling behind? You arrive first at the office and leave last, but your results never seem to match your effort. You put in 12-hour days while your colleague works 6 hours and gets promoted instead of you. Or maybe you're exhausted, burnt out, barely sleeping, and you watch others succeed with what looks like half your struggle. If you've ever wondered why hard work alone isn't enough, if you're tired of being tired with nothing to show for it, then this story will change how you work forever. Once, there was a farmer who almost destroyed his life by working too hard until one encounter taught him the crucial difference between effort and strategy. In a peaceful farming valley where families had worked the land for generations, there lived a 32-year-old farmer named Thomas. Thomas owned a modest 10-acre farm inherited from his father. He believed in one thing above all else: hard work. Every morning, Thomas woke at 4 a.m. He worked his fields with bare hands, refusing modern tools. "My grandfather did it this way," he would say. "Hard work is the only honest way." He planted every seed by hand, watered every row with a bucket, and pulled every weed himself. From sunrise to sunset, Thomas worked. His hands were calloused and bleeding. His back ached constantly, but he wore his exhaustion like a badge of honor. At night, he collapsed into bed, too tired to eat properly or spend time with his wife, Sarah. She would look at him with worried eyes and say, "Thomas, you're killing yourself. There has to be a better way." But Thomas would shake his head. "Sarah, success requires sacrifice. Hard work never fails. I just need to work harder." The neighboring farmers watched with a mixture of admiration and pity. If hard work alone could make someone rich, Thomas would be a millionaire. But despite working twice as many hours as his neighbors, Thomas's farm produced barely enough to survive. Every harvest was a struggle. Every season brought him closer to death. His crops were average. His yield was mediocre. And worst of all, he had no time, no energy, and no life outside of work. Next to Thomas lived Richard. Richard was the same age, had the same size farm, and even started with less money, but Richard worked from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. just 6 hours a day. He used modern irrigation, hired part-time help during harvest, and spent evenings reading, relaxing, and traveling with his family. Somehow, Richard's farm produced twice what Thomas's did. This fact haunted Thomas every night. One brutal summer, a severe drought hit the valley. Water became scarce. Thomas decided to work even harder. He woke at 3 a.m., carried water buckets from a distant well, making 50 trips a day. His body screamed, but he pushed through. Hard work never fails. He repeated like a prayer. Meanwhile, Richard simply adjusted his irrigation system to deliver water efficiently during cooler hours. On the 15th day, something inside Thomas broke. He was carrying his 40th bucket when his vision blurred. His legs gave out. The bucket slipped, spilling precious water. Thomas fell to his knees, gasping, his heart pounding irregularly. Sarah found him, collapsed between rows of dying crops. The doctor's words were clear. "Your body is shutting down. You're dehydrated, sleep-deprived, and on the edge of a heart attack. If you continue, you won't see the next harvest, not because of the drought, but because you'll be dead." That night, Thomas stared at the ceiling and felt defeat. Not from the drought, but from the realization that his entire belief system might be wrong. "I did everything right," he whispered to Sarah. "I worked harder than anyone. I sacrificed everything. Why am I failing?" Sarah held his hand. "Maybe hard work isn't the answer. Maybe there's something you haven't learned yet." 3 days later, Thomas knocked on Richard's door. Richard welcomed him warmly. They sat on the porch overlooking Richard's thriving farm. Thomas felt envy and curiosity. "Richard," Thomas said humbly, "I work twice your hours and pour everything into my farm, but you produce double the results." "How?" Richard stood up. "Come, let me show you something." In the tool shed, Richard picked up 2 axes, one old and dull, one sharp and gleaming. Imagine 2 woodcutters competing to chop trees. The first swings his axe for 12 hours straight, believing more effort means more trees. Richard handed Thomas the dull axe. Thomas swung. The axe bounced off with barely a dent. After 10 swings, he was breathing hard and the log had only a shallow cut. Richard took the sharp axe and swung once. It bit deep. 3 more swings and the log split. The second woodcutter works 10 hours, but stops every hour for 10 minutes to sharpen his axe. His competitor mocks him for wasting time, but by the end of the day, the second woodcutter has cut down twice as many trees. Richard looked Thomas in the eyes. "You are the first woodcutter. My friend, you've been swinging a dull axe for years, wondering why your hands bleed but the tree doesn't fall." Richard explained 3 principles. First, systems over effort. I don't carry water in book. I installed a drip irrigation system that delivers water directly to roots with 0 waste. It works while I sleep. You spend 6 hours hauling water. My system does the same job in 10 minutes. Second, focus over hustle. I grow only 2 crops that thrive in our soil. You grow 5, spreading your attention thin. I master 2 things. You struggle with 5. I produce excellence. You produce mediocrity. Third, rest is part of the strategy. My brain is fresh every day because I sleep 8 hours, exercise, and take breaks. I make better decisions and innovate. You're so exhausted, you can't think straight. You make mistakes that cost more time to fix. Richard placed a hand on Thomas's shoulder. You're not failing because you don't work hard enough. You're failing because you only know how to work hard. There's a difference between motion and progress, between being busy and being effective. Thomas returned home with hope. For the first time in years, he didn't rush to the fields. He sat with Sarah and a notebook. "Teach me to think differently," he said. The next morning, Thomas worked for hours, then stopped. He researched irrigation systems, visited the agricultural office, and made a plan. Within 2 weeks, he sold an old tractor and bought a basic drip system. Installing it took 3 days, but once running, water delivery dropped from 6 hours to 20 minutes. The saved time went into improving soil and planning. Thomas reduced crops from 5 to 2, the ones that grew best and sold highest. He hired help during peak season. He realized 1 hour of strategic planning created more value than 10 hours of mindless labor. The most profound change was in his life. He had dinner with Sarah. They talked and laughed. He played with his children. He started exercising, becoming stronger and more focused. 6 months later, the harvest came. Thomas's fields produced 40% more than his previous best year. Not because he worked harder, but because every hour was strategic and effective. He worked 7 hours a day instead of 15, yet produced more. Richard visited and nodded with approval. "You learned the lesson. Now you're not just a hard worker, you're a smart worker." Thomas clasped his hand. "Thank you for showing me there's more than one way to build something great." My friend, Thomas's story is not just about farming. It's about every person who believes that suffering equals success, that if you're not exhausted, you're not trying hard enough. Here's the truth our culture rarely tells you. Hard work is necessary, but it is not sufficient. The most successful people don't work the most hours. They work the smartest hours. Remember 3 things. First, before working harder, ask if there's a smarter system. Don't carry water in buckets if you can build a pipeline. Second, focus beats hustle. Choose 2 or 3 things that create the most value and master them. Mastery beats mediocrity. Third, rest is part of productivity. A tired mind makes expensive mistakes. A rested mind sees opportunities. So here's your challenge. Look at your work this week. Find a task you spend the most time on. Ask, is there a smarter way? Then take one afternoon to implement a better system instead of just working harder. You are not a machine designed to run until it breaks. You are a human with a brilliant mind capable of creating leverage. Stop swinging the dull axe. It's time to sharpen it.